Hello, beautiful soul. I'm Aurora, and welcome to Twin Flame Journey, a space where we explore the deeper meaning behind soul connections, divine timing, and the path that leads two hearts back to union. If you've been feeling the signs, you're in the right place.
It wasn't when she cried that it shook him. Not when she begged for clarity. Not when she sent long paragraphs trying to explain what she felt. Not even when she finally said, "I can't keep doing this." If his honest part of him knew how to survive those versions of her, the version that broke him was quieter. She stopped reaching. And people think that means she stopped caring. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes a woman becomes still because she's exhausted from carrying the emotional weight of two people while pretending it's communication. And he felt that shift immediately. Not intellectually, his body felt it first. The delayed replies, the absence of emotional checking, the strange calmness in her voice, the way she stopped trying to rescue every uncomfortable silence. It messed with him in ways he couldn't explain to anyone, because suddenly there was nothing left to push against. No emotional chasing, no reassurance fishing, no "are you okay?" No doorway back into control, just space. And ironically, that was the moment he started thinking about her constantly. Not in the romantic movie way people imagine. More like checking her profile at 1:14 a.m. while half asleep. Typing a message, then deleting it. Hearing a song she used to play in the car and feeling physically irritated for no reason. Cleaning the kitchen aggressively after remembering one random sentence she said 3 months ago. He told himself he wanted freedom. Then he got it. And the silence started sounding different than he imagined. Not peaceful, just loud. I don't think he realized how much of the relationship was being emotionally held together by her until she stopped doing it. That sounds harsher than I mean it to. Because people hear things like that and immediately want a villain. Someone cold. Someone manipulative. Someone selfish. But honestly, a lot of this wasn't intentional. That's what makes it difficult to talk about. He cared about her. I think he really did. He just got comfortable inside a version of love where she always reached first emotionally. And after a while, that starts feeling normal. Not because you consciously decide it should, just because humans adapt to patterns frighteningly fast. She was the one who noticed shifts in energy first. The one who would go quiet halfway through dinner and ask, carefully, "Are you okay?" And he'd immediately say yes. Too quickly sometimes. Like the answer had already been prepared before she even asked. Yeah, just tired. That phrase alone probably carried half the relationship. Just tired. Work stress. Headache. Long day. Didn't sleep well. And sometimes those things were true. But sometimes tired was easier than saying, "I don't know why intimacy suddenly makes me uncomfortable. I don't know why I pull away after getting close to someone. I don't know why being deeply loved occasionally feels like pressure sitting on my chest." That's harder to admit, especially for someone who learned to function emotionally by staying slightly detached from their own feelings. And she sensed it, almost immediately every time. That's the strange thing about emotionally attentive women. They notice the emotional temperature drop before the actual behavior changes. He could still be sitting beside her physically, still answering questions, still touching her leg absent-mindedly while watching a movie. But internally, he had already taken 2 emotional steps backward. And she felt it. You could see it in tiny moments, like her becoming quieter after vulnerable conversations, or the way she glanced at him when he picked up his phone too quickly after intimacy. Like she was trying not to overthink it, but already was. And honestly, part of him noticed those moments too. That's the uncomfortable part. People assume emotionally avoidant behavior means emotional blindness. Not always. Sometimes he knew exactly what he was doing while doing it. He'd feel her disappointment enter the room in subtle ways. Nothing dramatic, just a slight change in her voice. A pause that lasted 1 second too long. The way she'd say okay softer than usual. And for a brief second, guilt would hit him right in the stomach. Not overwhelming guilt. Just enough to make him uncomfortable. The kind that makes you suddenly want distraction. So he'd grab his phone, turn the TV louder, ask some practical question, shift the atmosphere before the emotional weight settled fully. And because she loved him, she often helped him do it. That's what nobody really talks about. Sometimes women participate in their own emotional deprivation because they're trying to preserve connection. She'd tell herself, "He's stressed. He's overwhelmed. Don't make it a big deal. Don't push too hard." Meanwhile, her body already knew something was off. You can feel when someone emotionally leaves the room before they physically do. The nervous system notices first. There's this tiny panic that starts happening internally when affection suddenly changes texture. When warmth becomes inconsistent. When tenderness feels interrupted by distance you can't explain logically. And she kept trying to reconnect things quietly before they broke openly. That became her role without either of them officially discussing it. She reopened difficult conversations. She softened tension. She sent the goodnight text first after weird interactions. She found ways to emotionally bridge the distance he created unintentionally. Or intentionally. Honestly, probably both. And the dangerous thing about that dynamic is how quickly it becomes invisible. Especially to the person receiving the emotional labor. He started relying on her consistency emotionally the way people rely on electricity. Constantly. Without thinking about it. Not because he didn't appreciate her, but because humans stop noticing what feels permanent. That's just true. I remember one moment that felt painfully ordinary at the time. They had spent the entire evening together. Nothing dramatic happened. Dinner. A show neither of them fully watched. Her laying against his chest while he scrolled his phone absent-mindedly. And if you looked at them from the outside, they probably seemed fine. But she felt him drifting. Not physically. Emotionally. There's a specific kind of silence that happens when someone is present but unreachable. And she kept trying to gently pull him back into the room. "You've been quiet tonight." He shrugged. "I'm okay." Another pause. "You sure?" And this is where it gets painfully human, because he wasn't lying completely. Part of him really was okay. Another part was emotionally halfway out the door already and didn't know why. That contradiction confused him too. People think emotional withdrawal is always calculated. Sometimes it's panic mixed with attachment mixed with unresolved fear mixed with genuine love. Which is honestly a horrible combination. Because then the person both wants closeness and resents it simultaneously. And he did. He wanted her there. Missed her when she wasn't around. Checked his phone for her messages. Felt calmer hearing her voice. But prolonged emotional intimacy started activating something restless inside him after a while. Like his system suddenly needed distance to regulate itself. So he'd subtly create it. Sometimes through silence. Sometimes through distraction. Sometimes through emotional vagueness. And because she loved him, she adapted around it instead of confronting the full truth immediately. That's what people do when they're trying not to lose someone. They adjust themselves slowly, quietly, until one day they barely recognize how much emotional weight they've been carrying alone. But early on, she still believed the distance was temporary, fixable, understandable, and honestly, he probably believed that too. That's why these dynamics become so emotionally dangerous. Nobody thinks they're building a slow emotional imbalance while it's happening. It just becomes routine. He withdraws. She reconnects. He gets overwhelmed. She stabilizes the atmosphere. He becomes emotionally hard to reach. She searches harder for understanding. And because she was emotionally perceptive, she often explained him to himself before he had to. He's just stressed lately. He has trouble opening up. He cares, he just struggles emotionally sometimes. Maybe all of that was true, but truth can still become a hiding place, especially when it prevents accountability. There were nights he could feel her trying not to ask for reassurance because she was scared of sounding needy. And instead of addressing that directly, he'd become extra affectionate for 15 minutes. Kiss her forehead, pull her closer, make her laugh, and temporarily, things would feel okay again. That's the confusing part. The relationship wasn't empty. There was real tenderness there, real chemistry, real emotional connection, which made the inconsistency hurt more. Because inconsistency mixed with intimacy creates emotional addiction in ways people rarely admit openly. The warmth keeps making the distance feel survivable. So both people stay longer inside patterns that are quietly exhausting them. And I think part of him genuinely believed she would always emotionally find her way back to him no matter how distant he became sometimes. Not consciously, just subconsciously. Because she always had before, after awkward silences, after emotional disconnection, after his periods of withdrawal. She returned, she reopened, she repaired, and eventually he stopped realizing how much effort that actually took from her. Not because he was cruel, because familiarity blinds people, especially emotionally. There's another detail people rarely talk about. After intimacy, he often became quieter. Not cold exactly, just elsewhere. Like his body relaxed, but his mind suddenly needed escape. So she'd lay there beside him trying to read the emotional atmosphere while pretending not to. You could almost feel her overthinking in real time. Did I do something? Why does he seem distant now? Should I give him space? Am I being too much? And meanwhile, he'd stare at the ceiling, feeling irritated at himself for pulling away again, while also not knowing how to stop doing it. That's the mess nobody explains properly. Sometimes he hated his own emotional reactions while repeating them. That happens more than people admit. One night she asked softly, "Do you ever feel weird after we get really close?" And he laughed a little too quickly. What, no? But his body betrayed him immediately, because he grabbed his phone right after saying it, opened an app, scrolled nowhere. She noticed. Of course she noticed. But she pretended not to. That's the tragedy of emotionally uneven relationships sometimes. Both people see more than they admit out loud. And for a long time, this became the version of her he learned to expect. The understanding one. The emotionally patient one. The one who kept translating silence into compassion. The one who stayed emotionally reachable even when he wasn't. And he got used to that version of her so deeply. He mistook her endurance for permanence. Which, honestly, is a mistake a lot of people realize too late. He kept saying he needed space. That became the sentence, the explanation, the defense, the emotional exit sign. And maybe part of him truly believed it. That's the uncomfortable thing about avoidance sometimes. It doesn't always feel dishonest from the inside. Sometimes it feels necessary, reasonable, temporary. Like emotional oxygen. But the problem was he used the word space for too many different things. Stress, overwhelm, fear, pressure, intimacy, expectation, guilt. It all got compressed into, "I just need some space." And after a while, even he stopped knowing what he actually meant by it. because there's healthy distance. And then there's emotional retreat disguised as independence. He didn't understand the difference yet. Or maybe he did in flashes. Late at night, in brief uncomfortable moments, he tried not to sit in too long. But during the day, he stayed functional enough to avoid looking too closely. That's another thing people misunderstand. Emotionally avoidant men often don't look emotionally chaotic externally. They go to work, reply to emails, make jokes, go to the gym, post normal things, meet friends for drinks. Meanwhile, internally, their emotional world looks like someone quietly pulling wires out of a control panel while pretending everything still works. And the strange part is, he genuinely liked closeness. That's what confused her. He pursued her emotionally in the beginning, wanted her attention, stayed up talking to her, remembered tiny details, reached for her hand first, texted her randomly during the day. He wasn't emotionally disconnected all the time. That's why she stayed confused so long. Because every time she started believing the distance meant he didn't care, he'd suddenly become warm again, present again, like the emotional wall had never existed. And honestly, he probably confused himself too. Because when intimacy felt safe, he leaned toward it naturally. But when intimacy became emotionally real, something shifted inside him. It's hard to explain unless you've experienced it. There's this moment where affection stops feeling light and starts feeling exposing. Like now, there's emotional consequence, need, expectation, attachment, and instead of feeling comforted by that, part of him started feeling trapped by it. Not because she was controlling, not because she demanded too much. Sometimes she was literally just loving him normally. But internally, his nervous system reacted like closeness itself carried danger. So the withdrawal started quietly, never dramatic at first. That's what makes these dynamics so psychologically confusing. If someone cheats, leaves suddenly, explodes emotionally, at least there's clarity. But this happened through tiny behavioral shifts, almost too subtle to explain. He'd text slower after emotionally intimate nights. Not intentionally every time. Sometimes he'd look at her message immediately, feel warmth, then suddenly feel pressure attached to replying properly. So he'd wait. 10 minutes, an hour, 3 hours. Meanwhile, she'd stare at the conversation, wondering why the emotional tone changed overnight. And he'd convince himself he was just busy. Sometimes he even was. But that wasn't the whole truth. The fuller truth sounded uglier. He was emotionally regulating through distance without admitting it. And because he hated conflict, he avoided explaining his inner experience honestly. How do you tell someone, I care about you deeply, but closeness sometimes makes me want to disappear for a little while? That sounds terrible out loud. So instead he became vague. I've just been in my head lately. I don't know what's wrong with me. I think I just need space. And she tried to respect it. That's the heartbreaking part. She really tried. But emotional ambiguity slowly exhausts people in ways that are difficult to measure while it's happening. Because her body never fully relaxed anymore. She started monitoring emotional temperature constantly. Tiny things became emotionally significant. How fast he replied. How long his hugs lasted. Whether he sounded distracted. Whether his good night felt warm or automatic. And he noticed her noticing, which made him feel even more pressure, which made him withdraw harder. People rarely talk about how cyclical these dynamics become. Both people start reacting to each other's reactions. And eventually nobody remembers where the original wound even started. I remember one specific moment. He was sitting in his car outside her apartment after they spent the weekend together. The kind of slow Sunday afternoon where nothing bad happened. Coffee cups still in the sink. Blankets messy on the couch. Her hair tied up lazily while she talked to him from the kitchen. Domestic. Soft. Real. Too real, maybe. Because halfway through the drive home, he felt this overwhelming urge for distance. Not from her specifically, just from the emotional intensity of being deeply integrated into someone else's life. So, instead of calling her later like he normally would, he ignored his phone for the rest of the evening. Not maliciously, avoidantly. There's a difference. But the impact feels similar to the person receiving it. She sent, "You okay?" And he saw it immediately. Didn't answer. Not because he wanted to hurt her, because something about emotional access suddenly felt heavy. So instead he scrolled social media for an hour without absorbing anything. Opened YouTube, closed it, walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, didn't want food, checked his phone again. Still her message sitting there. And internally, there were two completely contradictory experiences happening at once. One part of him missed her immediately. The other part felt relief being alone again. That contradiction is so important because people keep trying to simplify emotionally avoidant behavior into they don't care. Sometimes they care so much it dysregulates them. That's the problem. His emotional system associated deep attachment with loss of control. So closeness created anxiety almost as much as distance did, which is honestly exhausting for everyone involved. Eventually, he replied, "Yeah, sorry, just needed some time to decompress." And technically, that was true. But there was emotional information underneath that sentence he still couldn't admit fully. He didn't just need solitude. He needed relief from the vulnerability intimacy activated inside him. And she felt that difference even if she couldn't articulate it perfectly yet. Women often sense emotional withdrawal long before they logically justify it. The body notices inconsistency before the mind creates language for it. That's why she started asking subtle questions more often. "You seem far away lately. Did something change? Are we okay?" And every time she asked, he felt cornered by questions he didn't fully know how to answer honestly. Because what was he supposed to say? Yes, I love being close to you, and simultaneously feel the urge to emotionally escape afterward. Even he didn't fully understand himself. So instead he minimized, deflected, became practical. One night she tried talking to him about feeling disconnected lately. Nothing dramatic. She was actually calm about it. That almost made it worse. "I feel like sometimes after we get really close emotionally, you disappear a little." He immediately sighed. Not aggressively, just defensively tired. "I'm not disappearing. You kind of are. I've just had a lot going on." And maybe he had. But both of them knew that wasn't the entire conversation. Then came the silence. That emotionally painful kind where both people realize the real conversation is happening underneath the spoken one. She looked down for a second. "Okay." And something about how softly she said it made Gil crawl straight into his chest. Because he knew she was trying not to push him away by expressing needs. That realization made him feel horrible. And instead of becoming more emotionally open, he became more emotionally overwhelmed. That's the paradox nobody explains properly. Sometimes guilt increases avoidance, because now intimacy feels tied to shame. So he started needing space more frequently, longer gaps in communication, more emotional fog, more vague explanations. And externally, it looked emotionally casual. That's what made it so confusing for her. Because internally he was chaotic, but externally he still looked mostly fine. He'd post normal things online while privately feeling emotionally exhausted. Laugh with friends while thinking about unanswered messages. Go quiet during conversations and blame work stress when really he was emotionally overloaded by attachment itself. And late at night, usually much later than he admitted, he'd check her profile, not even always interacting, just looking, seeing if she posted anything, zooming in emotionally from a distance while simultaneously creating the distance himself. Human beings are complicated and embarrassing ways sometimes, especially men taught to associate emotional dependence with weakness. One night he almost texted her, "I don't know why I keep pulling away when I actually care." He typed most of it, stared at it, deleted it, because vulnerability felt dangerous once it became fully conscious. So instead he sent, "Sorry, I've been weird lately," which is such a painfully masculine sentence, honestly, condensing an entire emotional crisis into one vague line. And she responded gently. Too gently. "It's okay, I know you're trying." That message stayed with him longer than she probably realized, because deep down, he wasn't sure he was trying. Not fully. He was surviving emotionally, managing, avoiding collapse, avoiding exposure, but actually letting someone see the full confusion inside him. That still terrified him. So he kept calling it space, because the truth underneath sounded much harder to explain. The truth was, part of him wanted intimacy desperately, and another part associated intimacy with emotional danger the second it became too real. The strange thing is, the moment that changed, everything probably looked completely insignificant from the outside. No dramatic breakup, no screaming match, no final speech with cinematic background music playing in the emotional distance. It happened in the middle of an ordinary conversation, which honestly feels cruel when you think about it. How relationships sometimes quietly fracture during moments that don't even look important enough to remember. It was late. He was half distracted. She could feel it. Not because he was being intentionally cold, just emotionally unavailable in that specific passive way that makes someone feel alone while technically still talking to them. There's a difference. He had been replying slower all evening, not hours apart this time, just enough delay to create emotional static. She'd send something vulnerable. He'd react to the practical part only. She'd ask a feeling-based question. He'd answer like someone responding to customer service emails. Short, functional, emotionally flattened. And the worst part, he didn't even fully realize he was doing it. That's what emotional distancing often looks like in real life. Not cruelty. Not always. Just gradual reduction of emotional presence. Like someone unconsciously dimming lights in a room while insisting everything still looks normal. At one point she sent, "I miss feeling close to you." And he stared at the message for a long time. Not because he didn't care, because he did. Too much, maybe. The message created that familiar pressure in his chest again. Expectation. Need. Emotional exposure. He started typing 3 different responses. "What do you mean? I've just been stressed. I'm here." Deleted all of them. Finally, he sent, "You're overthinking." The second he pressed send, something inside him already knew that wasn't true. And I think part of her knew something important in that exact moment too. Not because the sentence itself was devastating. Honestly, people survive worse sentences than that all the time. It was the exhaustion underneath her reaction, or lack of reaction. That's what shifted. Normally, she would have explained herself after that, clarified, expanded, tried to emotionally reconnect the conversation. "No, I just mean you feel distant lately." I'm trying to understand where you're at. I miss us. She usually kept conversations emotionally alive long after he unconsciously started leaving them. But this time, nothing. Just, okay. That one word sat in the conversation strangely. Flat. Still. Unreaching. And he noticed immediately. That's the thing people don't understand. Men like this often notice emotional shifts instantly. They just don't always understand their own reaction to them. At first, he felt relief. Immediate relief. No emotional discussion. No pressure. No need to explain himself emotionally. The conversation ended quietly, which he thought he wanted, until about 20 minutes later when the silence started feeling wrong. He checked the conversation again. Nothing. No follow-up message. No attempt to repair the atmosphere. No emotional reopening. And his body reacted before his mind created meaning for it. Restlessness first. Then confusion. Then irritation. Not a her exactly. Just emotionally agitated in a direction he couldn't place. So he distracted himself. Opened Instagram. Scrolled mindlessly. Didn't absorb a single thing. Opened YouTube. Closed it. Walked into the kitchen. Stood there staring into the refrigerator like there might be emotional answers hidden behind expired and milk and leftover takeout containers. Then checked his phone again. Still nothing. And this is where the psychology gets painfully human. Because part of him wanted peace. But another part had become deeply accustomed to her reaching through emotional distance. Her trying. Her reopening. Her emotional pursuit. He didn't consciously think, she'll come back and fix the conversation. But emotionally, yeah, a part of him expected it. Because she always had before. That's how relationship dynamics quietly train people over time. And when those patterns suddenly disappear, the nervous system notices immediately, even before the ego does. So around midnight, he posted something meaningless on his story. Not intentionally manipulative. More subconscious than that. Just some random late night photo. Music playing in the background. A vague caption. And if he were fully honest with himself, part of him posted it for her. Not to communicate directly. Just to feel emotionally perceived again without having to be vulnerable first. Which is honestly such a painfully modern form of emotional avoidance. Wanting connection while avoiding direct emotional exposure. He checked twice to see if she viewed it. Then pretended he didn't care. Then checked again 10 minutes later. Nothing. That bothered him more than he wanted to admit. Because now there was no emotional feedback loop. No reassurance that she was still emotionally orbiting him the same way. And suddenly the silence felt different. He told himself, she's probably asleep. But something in him knew better. Not consciously. Just instinctively. The next morning she texted normally. Too normally. That's what unsettled him. No emotional residue. No continuation of the conversation from the night before. Just, hope work goes okay today. And he stared at the message longer than necessary. Because emotionally, it felt unfamiliar. Not cold. Not angry. Worse, controlled. There's something deeply destabilizing about someone becoming emotionally calm after repeatedly trying to reach you. Especially when you unconsciously relied on them being emotionally expressive to measure your importance. And he didn't know what to do with that feeling. So naturally, he withdrew slightly more. That's another contradiction people rarely talk about. Sometimes, when emotionally avoidant people feel relational instability, they don't move closer. They freeze harder. Like emotional uncertainty activates self-protection instead of pursuit. So he became slightly more distant over the next few days. Longer response times, shorter answers, more busy lately energy, and externally, it probably looked like he was losing interest. Internally, he was thinking about her constantly. That's the irony. Distance amplified her presence in his mind, because now there was unresolved emotional tension sitting underneath everything. At work, he'd randomly replay the okay message in his head, trying to decode tone from a single word like it contained hidden emotional evidence. Did she mean okay? Or her okay? Or detached okay? It sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, but people do this constantly after emotional shifts, especially when they're losing emotional access to someone gradually instead of suddenly. One night he almost called her, not because he had clarity, not because he suddenly understood his feelings perfectly, mostly because the emotional distance was starting to feel unfamiliar in a way that made his chest tight. But instead of calling, he watched her stories silently. That detail matters, because emotionally avoidant behavior often looks exactly like this. Proximity without vulnerability. Watching, checking, hovering emotionally nearby, but not stepping fully into honesty. And she noticed. Of course she noticed. Women usually notice these things long before men admit them to themselves. But this time she didn't emotionally feed the behavior. No indirect posts. No emotional bait. No, is everything okay? Just space. Actual space. And ironically, that's when his emotional system started getting louder. He started rereading old conversations. Tiny moments suddenly hit differently. Her asking if he got home safe. Her remembering random details about his week. Her checking his mood before talking about herself. Things he previously experienced as normal suddenly felt emotionally expensive. Like he was realizing retroactively how much care had quietly existed around him. And regrets started arriving in fragments. Not fully formed yet. Just uncomfortable flashes. Like hearing her laugh in an old video and suddenly feeling physically hollow for a second. Or reaching for his phone automatically to send her something funny before remembering the emotional atmosphere between them had changed. That realization hits strangely every time. Like missing a step walking downstairs in the dark. One evening his friend asked casually, "You good lately? You seem distracted." And he answered too fast. "Yeah, just tired." Again with tired. That word carried entire emotional universes he refused to unpack. Because the truth sounded more vulnerable. The truth was, the silence was affecting him now too. Only he didn't know how to admit it without confronting the deeper issue underneath everything. That she had stopped emotionally chasing the connection. And without that pursuit, he was finally left alone with himself inside the silence he helped create. There's a specific kind of discomfort that happens when someone stops trying to pull emotion out of you. At first it feels relieving, then disorienting, then strangely lonely. Because now there's no emotional movement happening around your avoidance anymore. No one softening it. No one translating it into understanding. No one carrying the emotional continuity of the relationship alone. Just stillness. And stillness has a brutal way of exposing things distraction used to hide. Especially at night. Especially when the phone stays quiet longer than you expected. Especially when the person who always reached first doesn't this time. He thought her sadness was the hard part. At least sadness made sense to him. Crying, emotional conversations, long paragraphs at midnight. The quiet "can we talk" text. Those things made him uncomfortable, sure. Sometimes overwhelmed him completely. But emotionally, he still understood the role he played inside those moments. She was hurting. He was the reason. The connection still existed. Even conflict can feel reassuring when you're afraid of abandonment. Because conflict still means emotional investment. Still means someone is reaching. And she always reached. Even when she was exhausted. Even when she told herself she wouldn't this time. There was almost always another conversation. Another attempt. Another emotional opening left cracked slightly open between them. But eventually something changed in her. Not dramatically. Honestly, that's what unsettled him most. There was no emotional explosion attached to it. No speech. No revenge. No cold performance pretending not to care. She just became calmer. And people misunderstand that kind of calmness all the time. They think calm means healed, detached, over it. Sometimes calm is just exhaustion that has stopped arguing with reality. And her energy started changing in ways he couldn't fully explain, but absolutely felt. The first thing he noticed was her silence becoming less emotional. Before, silence between them felt charged, heavy, waiting, fragile. Now it felt strangely self-contained, like she was no longer emotionally standing outside his locked door hoping he'd eventually open it. That realization hit him slowly, in pieces. One afternoon she took 4 hours to respond to him. 4 hours. Objectively, that means nothing. People have jobs, lives, responsibilities. But emotionally, it shook him immediately. Because she never used to disappear emotionally like that. Not with him. Not intentionally. And the embarrassing part is, he checked his phone constantly during those 4 hours while pretending not to care. That contradiction followed him everywhere now. He'd toss his phone onto the couch dramatically like he was above emotional dependency. Then pick it up 30 seconds later. Open the conversation. Close it. Check Instagram. Reopen the conversation. Nothing. And what made it worse was the complete lack of emotional punishment in her behavior. No passive aggression. No guilt tripping. No dramatic energy. Just normalcy. That's what terrified him. Because her emotional calmness felt like emotional relocation. Like she was slowly moving herself somewhere internally he no longer had automatic access to. And he felt that before he consciously understood it. One night they talked on the phone briefly. The conversation wasn't bad. That's important. Nothing specifically wrong happened. But something felt missing. Or maybe absent is the better word. She wasn't pulling emotional intimacy out of him anymore. There were pauses she no longer rushed to repair. Moments where she simply let silence exist instead of anxiously filling it. And he became hyper-aware of those silences immediately. Funny how the things we once resisted become terrifying once they disappear. At one point he said, "You've been quiet lately." And she laughed softly. Not bitterly. Just tired. Have I? That answer bothered him for reasons he couldn't explain logically. Because underneath it, he sensed something emotionally dangerous. Acceptance. Not acceptance of losing him exactly. More like acceptance that she couldn't keep emotionally carrying both people through the connection anymore. And part of him still assumed she would eventually return to trying harder. Because she always had before. That assumption had quietly settled into his nervous system over time. Not consciously, but deeply. He thought emotional access to her was permanent. Even while hesitating emotionally himself. Even while pulling away. Even while staying inconsistent. Some part of him believed she'll still be there. Which sounds arrogant when written plainly. But honestly, human beings do this in relationships constantly. We trust emotional patterns long after they've started breaking. Especially when someone has loved us patiently. And she had. Probably longer than he deserved sometimes. That realization started arriving slowly too. not in one dramatic moment, more like tiny emotional paper cuts throughout ordinary days. He started noticing she no longer asked where he was emotionally. That used to be her thing. "You seem off. What's going on in your head lately? Talk to me." At the time, those questions overwhelmed him. Now, their absence made him restless, because without realizing it, he had grown emotionally dependent on her emotional attention while simultaneously resisting it. That contradiction sounds insane until you've lived it. One part of him craved emotional closeness desperately. Another part feared being emotionally known too deeply. So he stayed in this exhausting in-between space, wanting intimacy, then retreating from it once it arrived fully. And she had spent months trying to emotionally navigate around that contradiction without abandoning herself completely. But now something in her felt different. More still. More contained. One evening he opened her social media profile. Not intentionally at first. Just habit. Muscle memory almost. And immediately he noticed something subtle. She looked lighter. Not happier exactly. That word irritated him for some reason. But calmer. Less emotionally consumed. And instead of feeling relieved by that, he felt strangely threatened. That's difficult to admit honestly. Because shouldn't you want someone you care about to feel emotionally better? Of course. But human emotions are not always morally clean. Part of him felt replaced by her peace. Not by another person. By her own emotional self-protection. And that realization triggered something ugly inside him. Not hatred. Not even anger exactly. More like emotional displacement. Suddenly, he became irritated by tiny things. Her delayed responses. Her shorter texts. The fact she no longer emotionally over-explained herself. He even caught himself thinking, "She's acting different." And internally another voice answered immediately, "You changed first." That silence after the thought felt brutal. Because deep down, he knew she hadn't become distant randomly. She became tired. There's a huge difference. But acknowledging that fully would require confronting his own inconsistency honestly. And he still wasn't fully ready for that. So instead, his emotions started leaking out sideways. He'd become colder during conversations for no reason. More sarcastic. Slightly detached. Then immediately miss her warmth the second the conversation ended. That emotional whiplash exhausted him privately. One night he almost texted, "Are you pulling away from me?" But the question felt too vulnerable, too exposing. Because if she answered honestly, he wasn't sure he could emotionally handle it. So instead he sent something casual. "How's your week been?" Which is another painfully human thing people do. Trying to access emotional reassurance through indirect conversations because direct vulnerability feels terrifying. And she answered kindly. That's what made everything harder. She wasn't cruel, wasn't punishing him, wasn't trying to manipulate him emotionally. If anything, she sounded gentler now, just less available. And somehow that hurt him more than anger would have. Because anger still leaves emotional fingerprints. Detachment leaves space. And space forces people to meet themselves. He started opening old photos late at night sometimes. Not obsessively, just randomly. Like emotional memories started attaching themselves to ordinary moments without permission. Her laughing in the passenger seat. Blurry dinner pictures. A screenshot of some dumb conversation he forgot he saved. And each memory carried this uncomfortable emotional undertone now. She loved me more openly than I allowed myself to fully receive. That thought followed him round quietly, especially at night. Especially during the strange empty hours where distraction stops working temporarily. One night he sat in his apartment with the TV running quietly in the background while rereading old messages between them. Not even the romantic ones. That's the strange part. The ordinary ones hurt more. Her asking if he ate. Her reminding him about something important. Her sending random thoughts during the day because he existed naturally inside her emotional world. And suddenly he understood something deeply uncomfortable. He had mistaken her emotional consistency for something endlessly renewable. Like she would always emotionally compensate for his hesitation. Always reach. Always soften. Always reopen. But people run out eventually. Even loving people. Especially loving people. There's a specific grief that comes from realizing someone stopped chasing you not because they stopped caring, but because caring became too painful. And I think part of him finally started sensing that now. Not fully consciously yet, but emotionally. In his body. In the silence. In the way her calmness no longer invited him back into emotional safety automatically. And maybe the most unsettling part was this. Her tears once made him feel guilty, but her calmness made him feel replaceable. Not by another man, by her own growing ability to survive emotionally without needing him to finally become ready. At first, he told himself nothing was really changing. That's important, because emotionally, denial rarely sounds dramatic inside someone's head. It sounds reasonable, temporary, manageable. He wasn't sitting around thinking, I'm losing her. It was more subtle than that. More like, she's probably just busy. She's giving me space. This is actually healthier. We were talking too much anyway. And maybe part of that was true. But underneath those explanations, his body had already started reacting to the emotional shift long before his mind created a story for it. That's the strange thing about attachment. The body notices absence in primitive ways. Before language, before logic, before ego catches up. He started sleeping differently first. Not insomnia exactly, just fractured sleep. The kind where you wake up at 3:17 a.m. for no clear reason and immediately check your phone while pretending you're just checking the time. And every time her name wasn't there, something small tightened in his chest. Not devastation, just emotional static. Enough to make rest feel incomplete. He hated how quickly his hand reached for his phone in the mornings now. Before coffee, before fully opening his eyes. Checking if she texted, then immediately acting emotionally detached once he saw she had. That contradiction exhausted him privately. One morning she sent, "Hope today feels lighter for you." Simple message. Kind, warm, controlled. And instead of feeling comforted, he felt this strange wave of sadness he couldn't explain. Because she sounded emotionally farther away while still being caring. Like someone slowly backing out of a room without slamming the door. And his nervous system felt it immediately. He stared at the message too long, then replied casually, "Thanks, hope your day goes good too." He reread his own response afterward and physically cringed. Because internally he felt much more than that. But vulnerability still felt dangerous. Especially now. Now that her emotional energy wasn't constantly reaching toward him anymore. So instead he started coping through movement, distraction, noise. Work became louder emotionally, not literally louder, just more consuming. He started staying busy longer than necessary, answering emails late at night, cleaning parts of his apartment that didn't need cleaning, going to the gym with an almost aggressive intensity. That's another thing people rarely talk about. Men sometimes process emotional overwhelm physically before emotionally. Like the body starts searching for somewhere to put the emotional tension when the mind refuses to name it directly. So he'd run harder, lift heavier, drive longer routes home for no reason. And still, she kept showing up in the quietest moments. Not dramatic moments, human ones. That's what made it impossible to fully escape. One night, he was grocery shopping, half distracted, pushing the cart slowly through fluorescent lighting and bad music playing overhead. Completely ordinary. Then he passed the coffee section and saw the brand she always bought. And suddenly she was everywhere. Her standing in his kitchen sleepy and wearing one of his hoodies. Her complaining that he never bought enough creamer. Her laughing because he made coffee too strong every single time. The memory hit so fast it physically irritated him. Not because the memory was bad, because he couldn't control when she appeared emotionally anymore. That's what grief feels like sometimes before people admit it's grief. Emotional ambushes during mundane life. And afterward, he just stood there staring at coffee bags way too long like a crazy person. An older woman finally reached around him awkwardly and said, "Sorry, excuse me." And he realized he'd completely frozen in the middle of the aisle. That embarrassed him more than it should have, because externally his life still looked functional. That's what makes this stage so isolating. Nobody around him knew he was emotionally unraveling in microscopic ways throughout the day. Friends still joked with him normally. Co-workers still saw the same version of him. Even she probably didn't fully know how much space she occupied inside him now. Because, ironically, he still acted emotionally restrained outwardly. One night, he opened their old messages looking for something specific. He couldn't even remember what. But instead, he found a voice message she sent months ago. Just her laughing because she got lost driving somewhere. That was it. Nothing profound. And yet hearing her voice unexpectedly at 12:40 in the morning nearly destroyed his composure. He replayed it 3 times. Then immediately got angry at himself afterward. Closed the app. Locked the phone. Walked into the bathroom. Splashed cold water on his face like that would somehow regulate emotional attachment. It's almost embarrassing how physical heartbreak becomes. People describe it poetically all the time. But honestly, sometimes it's just standing barefoot in your kitchen at 1 a.m. feeling emotionally nauseous because someone's absence suddenly became real for 30 seconds. And the body reacts before pride can reorganize the emotion into something cleaner. That's what was happening to him now. His ego still wanted to frame everything as temporary distance. His body knew better. His appetite changed too. Some days he barely ate without noticing. Other days he ordered too much food and let half of it go cold while scrolling through old conversations, pretending he wasn't rereading them. One night he caught himself smiling at an old picture she sent him, then immediately feeling grief right behind the smile. That combination almost made him angry. Relief and sadness arriving together. Human emotions are ugly like that sometimes. Nothing arrives in clean categories. He missed her, resented meeting her, wanted to text her, wanted to disappear, wanted reassurance, wanted freedom. Sometimes all within the same hour. And because he still struggled to process emotion directly, his mind kept trying to convert emotional pain into practical explanations. Maybe I'm just stressed. Maybe work is getting to me. Maybe I need sleep. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Meanwhile, his body was literally reacting to emotional loss. Tight chest, restlessness, sudden exhaustion, random waves of anxiety while doing completely ordinary things. One evening, he drove around for almost an hour after work instead of going home. No destination, just movement. Street lights, music low, windows cracked slightly open. And somewhere during that drive, he started replaying one tiny memory obsessively. A completely insignificant moment. She had been sitting beside him at a red light months earlier, absent-mindedly tracing circles against his arm while talking about something he barely remembered now. That's it. That was the memory. Not sex. Not a dramatic confession. Not some cinematic goodbye. Just her hand on his arm. And suddenly he realized with painful clarity. His body remembered safety with her before his mind learned how to value it properly. That realization hit hard, because now the comfort was gone, and his nervous system was searching for it everywhere. Another difficult truth. He started checking her social media almost compulsively, not interacting, rarely liking anything, just watching quietly, trying to feel connected without risking rejection directly. Sometimes he'd stare at her profile picture wondering if she looked different or if he was imagining it. Sometimes he'd feel relieved seeing she seemed okay, then weirdly hurt by the exact same thing, because her emotional survival forced him to confront the possibility that she might genuinely adapt to life without him emotionally. And the thought activated panic in places he still didn't fully understand. One night he typed, "I miss you." Simple, honest. His thumb hovered over send for almost a full minute. Then the internal dialogue started again. "You're being dramatic. No, you actually miss her. She's pulling away because you kept confusing her. What if she's finally done emotionally? What if she answers coldly? What if she answers warmly and you still can't fully show up?" That last question stopped him, because deep down, underneath all the longing, he still feared his own emotional inconsistency. So he deleted the message. Again. And afterward he felt worse. That's the exhausting part about avoidance once attachment deepens. The person suffers both the absence and their own inability to move toward repair cleanly. It becomes a psychological tug-of-war inside the body. One part screaming for closeness, another pulling the emergency brake the second vulnerability appears. And meanwhile life keeps moving around you normally. That's the surreal part. People are laughing in restaurants. Co-workers are discussing weekend plans. Traffic still exists. Bills still need paying. While internally, you're playing one sentence someone said from months ago like it contains the emotional answer to your entire life. One evening he remembered something she once told him quietly during an argument. "You only seem to feel me fully when I stop reaching." At the time, he got defensive immediately. Said she was exaggerating. Now the sentence haunted him, because he was finally starting to understand what she meant. Not intellectually, physically, emotionally, in his chest, in the silence, in the strange emptiness that kept appearing during ordinary moments. And maybe the hardest part was this. He still hadn't fully admitted to himself that he was grieving the relationship, but his body already knew. It didn't happen all at once. That's important, because if it had, maybe he would have known what to call it immediately. But instead it arrived in fragments, in places that didn't make sense, at times that should have been neutral, like emotional interference leaking into ordinary life. He was still functioning, still showing up, still answering messages, still going to work, still making jokes when conversations required it. From the outside, nothing looked broken, but inside, something had shifted shape. Not loudly, just enough to make everything slightly unfamiliar. It started with friends. That's usually how it begins for people who are used to holding emotional tension privately. Someone would laugh at something in the group chat, and he would respond late. Not because he didn't see it, but because the emotional reflex to engage immediately wasn't there anymore. He'd read the message, stare at it, feel nothing, then feel something he couldn't name, and close the phone. then reopen it a minute later like something might have changed. Nothing had. That pattern repeated itself enough times that even he noticed it eventually. Not emotionally at first. Logically. Like, why am I like this lately? But he didn't answer that question honestly. Because the answer wasn't simple. It wasn't stress. It wasn't fatigue. It wasn't just work. It was accumulation of emotional avoidance meeting emotional absence, of distance meeting silence, of someone finally stopping the pattern he had unconsciously relied on to regulate connection. And he didn't have language for that yet. So he kept moving. That's what people do when they don't have emotional language for something that's already happening inside them. They move. He started staying out longer than usual. Not partying. Not anything dramatic. Just lingering in places where he didn't have to sit alone with his thoughts immediately afterward. Bars where conversations didn't require depth. Late night drives with no destination. Walking longer routes home just to delay arriving somewhere quiet. Because quiet had started feeling different. Not peaceful. Revealing. At work, he could still perform normally. That's the strange part. Emotional instability doesn't always collapse functionality. Sometimes it just runs underneath it like background noise no one else can hear. He'd answer emails with precision. Attend meetings. Not at the right moments. But during pauses, his mind would drift somewhere else entirely. Not even dramatic thoughts. Just her. Small things. Her voice saying his name in a way he didn't fully appreciate at the time. The way she used to send random updates about her day. The way she always noticed when he was slightly off before anyone else did. And suddenly those memories didn't feel neutral anymore. They felt loaded. Like his brain had decided to reorganize the emotional value of everything after the fact. One evening after work, he found himself sitting in his car longer than usual. Not leaving immediately. Just parked. Engine off. Hands resting on the steering wheel without moving. The city outside continued normally. Motorbikes passing. People walking. Light changing. And inside the car, everything felt slightly disconnected from that movement. He checked his phone. Nothing important. Then he checked it again. Not because he expected anything, but because his body had developed a habit of seeking her presence in digital absence. It wasn't even conscious anymore. It was reflex. And that realization irritated him. So he locked the phone and forced himself to drive. But halfway home, something strange happened. A song came on randomly through shuffle. Nothing special, but it was one she used to play. Not intentionally sentimental, just something she liked during a random phase of her life. And suddenly the car didn't feel like just a car anymore. It felt like memory was physically sitting inside it. He almost changed the song immediately, but didn't, because for some reason, he needed to hear it. That's another contradiction people don't talk about. Even when emotional memories hurt, there's a pull toward them. Like pain has its own gravity. The song played quietly through the speakers while traffic moved slowly around him. And he remembered something completely ordinary. Her sitting in the passenger seat at a red light, tapping lightly on the dashboard to the rhythm of the music without even realizing she was doing it. Not looking at him, just existing beside him comfortably. And he realized something uncomfortable in that moment. He didn't just miss her. He missed how naturally she existed around him without emotional tension. That realization didn't come with clarity. It came with discomfort. Because it meant the loss wasn't just romantic. It was environmental. His nervous system had adapted to her presence without him fully noticing. And now it was recalibrating in her absence. Poorly. At home that night, he didn't immediately go inside. He sat in his car for a while longer, doing nothing, then finally went upstairs. The apartment fell to quiet. Not empty, just lacking something unspoken. He turned on the TV without really watching it, then turned it off again, then stood in the kitchen for no reason, opened the fridge, closed it. It wasn't hunger. It was displacement. The body trying to find something to do with emotional excess that has nowhere to go. Eventually, he ended up on the couch with his phone again, scrolling, not absorbing, just moving through content without meaning. Then he paused. Her profile. He didn't plan it. He rarely did anymore. It just happened, like muscle memory. And this time something was different. She wasn't absent. She wasn't present either. She was elsewhere emotionally. That's the only way he could describe it internally. Her posts looked normal, but they didn't feel like they were reaching him anymore. And that difference was subtle but devastating. Because before, even when she wasn't speaking to him directly, there was always a sense of emotional proximity. Now, it felt like he was looking at someone who had reorganized their internal world without inviting him into it. He stared at her profile longer than he meant to, then closed the app, opened it again seconds later, scrolled, closed it again, and finally sat still, phone on his chest, eyes on the ceiling. That's when something unfamiliar started happening. Not panic, not sadness in the traditional sense. Something quieter. Recognition. He started remembering conversations differently. Not just what she said, but how she felt when she said it. The pauses. The careful tone. The way she tried not to sound too emotional even when she clearly was. And suddenly those memories weren't just memories. They were evidence of something he hadn't fully acknowledged while it was happening, that she had been emotionally present in ways he had been partially absent from. And that realization didn't come as guilt immediately. It came as pressure. Like his chest couldn't fully expand comfortably. He tried to distract himself, opened a messaging app, scrolled through conversations, stopped on her name, typed something. Hey, deleted it, typed again. How are you? Deleted again, then stopped entirely, because nothing he could send in that moment felt honest enough without opening something he wasn't sure he could sustain emotionally. And that's where the internal conflict really sharpened. He didn't want distance, but he also didn't trust his own ability to maintain closeness without retreating again. So he stayed frozen, phone in hand, conversation unsent, and the silence between them now digital, now emotional felt heavier than before. The next day, something even more subtle happened. He noticed he was thinking about her during completely unrelated tasks. Not constantly, but unpredictably. While washing his hands, while waiting for coffee, while listening to someone talk at work. Her name would just appear in his mind without warning, not accompanied by a clear emotion, just presence. And that unsettled him more than sadness would have. Because sadness at least feels like something you can locate. This felt like emotional residue spread across everything. And still, she wasn't doing anything dramatic. No messages. No confrontation. No emotional escalation. Just reduced presence. And that reduction was what made everything else louder. One night, a friend asked him casually if he was seeing her still. He paused a fraction too long, then said, "Yeah, I think so." Even hearing himself say it felt strange, because it didn't match the emotional reality anymore. Not fully. And later that night, alone again, he realized something he didn't want to fully articulate yet. He wasn't just adjusting to her absence. He was adjusting to her no longer adjusting to him. And that difference, was quietly destabilizing everything he thought he understood about the connection. It didn't look like anything at first. That's the part that still messes with him when he thinks about it later. Because if there had been a moment, some clear emotional rupture, some obvious sentence that marked the shift, he might have been able to locate it in memory like a fixed point. But there wasn't one. It was more like she stopped repeating herself, stopped trying to be understood in the same way, stopped circling back to the same emotional explanations like they could eventually land somewhere inside him if she just phrased them correctly enough times. And at first, he didn't even notice, because life kept going normally on the surface. She still replied, still showed up in small ways, still answered his messages with kindness, but something underneath the communication changed. The emotional effort stopped spilling outward. That invisible effort people don't talk about much, the constant translation of feelings into words someone else can receive. She used to do that, a lot more than he realized at the time. If she felt distant, she'd explain it. If she felt hurt, she'd soften it. If something he did affected her, she'd wrap it in context so it wouldn't feel like an accusation. Not because she was weak, but because she cared about keeping the connection intact. And somewhere along the way, that became her job in the relationship without either of them explicitly agreeing to it. He got used to being the one who could retreat, and she became the one who would return things to emotional balance afterward. At first, it didn't feel uneven. It felt like love, like effort, like patience. But patience, when it's one-sided long enough, starts to turn into something heavier. And he didn't fully understand that until she stopped doing it. It started small, almost unnoticeable. He said something slightly dismissive one evening, not cruel, just emotionally absent. Something like, "You're overthinking it." Not the first time he'd said something like that. But usually, it led somewhere. Usually she would explain herself again, try to reframe what she meant, try to stay emotionally connected through the misunderstanding. This time, she didn't. There was a pause. Not dramatic, just a pause long enough for something to shift. Then she said, "Okay," and that was it. No follow-up, no clarification, no softening, just okay. He remembers that moment later more than he understood it at the time, because initially it felt like relief. No emotional negotiation, no deeper conversation, no tension to manage, just clean closure of the moment. He even moved on quickly, changed the subject, scrawled his phone, went back to whatever he was doing. But something subtle had already changed. And it didn't show up immediately in him. It showed up in her absence afterward. Not physical absence, emotional absence inside the dynamic. The next few conversations felt different, but he couldn't quite name why. She was still polite, still warm, still present, but something was missing in the way she engaged. She no longer reached back into emotional ambiguity to rebuild clarity between them. Before, she would interpret silence. Now she let silence sit. Before, she would ask follow-up questions to understand him better. Now she accepted surface-level answers without trying to dig deeper. And that shift started creating a strange imbalance he didn't have language for yet. Because suddenly, there was no emotional repair mechanism happening after disconnection. No one smoothing over the gaps. No one translating what wasn't being said. And for the first time, he started feeling something unfamiliar. He had to sit in his own emotional ambiguity without it being cleaned up by her effort. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt uncomfortable in a very quiet way. Like background noise that you only notice when it stops. One evening, he sent her a message while slightly distracted. Something vague. Something half present. She replied normally, but didn't extend the conversation, didn't pull it further, didn't add emotional energy to keep it alive. And he stared at the screen a little longer than usual afterward, not because anything was wrong in the exchange itself, but because nothing continued it. That's what his nervous system wasn't used to. There used to be continuation. Now there was closure. Soft, polite, complete closure. He didn't realize it yet, but she had started conserving emotional effort. Not out of punishment, not out of strategy, out of exhaustion. Because at some point, repeatedly trying to be understood by someone who only partially shows up emotionally starts to cost more than it returns. And she had been paying that cost quietly for a long time. He just never saw the full extent of it while it was happening. That's the painful part about emotional hindsight. You don't realize how much someone was translating themselves for you until they stop. One night, they had a small misunderstanding. Something minor again. A tone mismatch. A slightly cold response. A moment of emotional misalignment. Before, she would have tried to fix it immediately. She would have said something like, "I didn't mean it like that. I think you misunderstood me. Let me explain." But this time, she didn't rush to correct anything. She just let the conversation rest where it landed. And he felt it. Not consciously at first. Just a subtle shift in emotional temperature. Like a room that used to have someone quietly adjusting the atmosphere for comfort suddenly no longer being adjusted. Later that night, he replayed the conversation in his head. Not because it was serious, but because it felt unfinished in a way he couldn't explain. And that lack of emotional follow-through started bothering him more than he expected. He told himself, "She's just tired today." But something inside him resisted the explanation. Because it wasn't just one moment. It was a pattern starting to form. She was no longer trying to be fully understood. And more importantly, she no longer seemed distressed about not being fully understood. That second part mattered more than he realized. Because previously, part of what kept him emotionally angered even during his own withdrawal was her emotional persistence. Her need to clarify. Her desire to reconnect meaningfully. Her effort to make sure things weren't left emotionally incomplete. That energy kept the relationship alive even when he was partially absent. But now that energy was gone. And what replaced it wasn't anger. It was acceptance. That's what unsettled him. Because acceptance removes urgency. And without urgency, avoidance has nothing to push against anymore. There were moments he almost reached out more deeply. Almost said something more honest. Almost admitted he felt something shifting. But every time he moved in that direction, he hesitated. Because part of him still expected her to meet him halfway emotionally like she used to. And part of him was afraid she wouldn't. One night, he typed a message. "I feel like we've been a bit off lately." He stared at it, deleted it, rewrote it, deleted it again. Because anything he tried to say felt like it required him to step into emotional clarity he didn't fully have yet. And ironically, the hesitation itself was becoming part of the distance. Meanwhile, she wasn't escalating anything. No accusations. No emotional pressure. No attempts to force clarity. Just reduced emotional investment in trying to decode him constantly. And that was the part he couldn't emotionally adjust to yet. Because he had grown used to being partially misunderstood and still emotionally pursued. Now, he was being partially misunderstood and not pursued at the same level. One evening, she responded to something he said with a simple, "Yeah, I get it." No follow-up. No emotional unpacking. No deeper engagement. And that one sentence bothered him more than it should have. Because it didn't feel like agreement. It felt like emotional distance wrapped in politeness. Later that night, he found himself thinking about her more than usual, not because she was doing anything dramatic, but because she wasn't doing what she used to do, and the absence of emotional effort was becoming louder than anything she said. He started noticing other small changes too. She no longer asked what he was thinking when he went quiet, no longer tried to decode his emotional shifts mid-conversation, no longer circled back later to make sure everything was okay between them. And without realizing it, he started missing those behaviors, even though he used to feel slightly overwhelmed by them. That contradiction made him uncomfortable, because it forced him to confront something he wasn't ready to fully accept. He had been emotionally relying on her effort to maintain connection more than he realized. Not consciously, but structurally. And now that structure was weakening, and for the first time, he started feeling the full weight of his own emotional inconsistency without it being softened by her interpretation. That's when it hit him quietly, in a way he couldn't ignore anymore. She wasn't trying to understand him less because she cared less. She was trying to understand him less because she was finally starting to understand what it cost her to keep trying. It's strange how it doesn't happen during the worst moments. That's what he expected, honestly. He thought if it entered or even just drifted far enough, he'd feel it most when things fell apart. Loneliness during breakdowns, sadness during arguments, regret during obvious loss. But it didn't show up there. It showed up on a random Tuesday that was actually going okay. That's the part that confused him the most. He was at work. Nothing unusual. Normal emails. Normal conversations. A slightly productive morning. He even felt decent. Not happy exactly, but functioning in a clean, organized way that felt almost satisfying. And then it hit. Not like a wave. More like a quiet drop in emotional temperature that didn't match anything happening around him. He was sitting at his desk, looking at something completely unrelated, when a thought appeared. She would have liked this. It wasn't even about something meaningful. Just a small detail. A joke someone made. A random observation. A moment that used to get sent immediately without thinking. And his hand moved instinctively toward his phone before he even realized what he was doing. That reflex scared him more than the thought itself, because it showed how deeply embedded she still was in the way his mind organized everyday life. Not as a dramatic memory, but as a default reference point. Someone he mentally shared things with automatically. And for a second, he just sat there staring at his phone without unlocking it, because there was nothing to send anymore. That realization didn't feel loud. It felt strangely flat, like a door opening into a room that used to have light in it, but doesn't anymore. He locked the phone again and tried to continue working, but the emotional interruption didn't leave. It just stayed underneath everything. That's how it usually starts. Not with sadness, with interruption. He noticed it again later that afternoon during something even more ordinary. A co-worker laughed at something on their phone and showed him a video. He smiled, reacted normally, even made a small comment. Everything looked fine externally, but internally, something was slightly misaligned. Because in the middle of that normal interaction, his mind quietly registered. She would have laughed harder than this, and that thought landed differently than the morning one. Because it wasn't just about her absence. It was about comparison, not in a conscious, judgmental way. More like emotional memory automatically reconstructing a version of her presence inside ordinary moments. He didn't feel sad yet. Not fully. Just displaced. Like part of his internal emotional mapping system was still trying to include someone who wasn't actively participating anymore. After work, he went out with a friend. Nothing serious. Just dinner, casual conversation, normal noise of life continuing. At first, it helped. The kind of distraction that feels effective for about an hour. He laughed a few times, talked about random things, listened without overthinking, and for a brief moment, he thought maybe he was actually moving past whatever this was. That illusion lasted until a very specific silence at the table. His friend was talking mid-story and paused to check something on their phone. Just a normal pause. Nothing meaningful. But in that pause, his mind did something automatic again. It reached for her. Not literally. Emotionally. Like a missing presence had become visible in the gap between external sounds. Because she used to fill those gaps differently. Not by being loud, but by being present in a way that made silence feel shared instead of empty. And suddenly, sitting there in a crowded restaurant, he felt oddly alone in a way that didn't match the environment at all. That mismatch is what makes it so disorienting. You're surrounded by people, noise, movement, life happening normally. But internally, something feels slightly out of sync. Like you're watching your own life from a few inches behind where you used to be emotionally anchored. He excused himself to the bathroom at some point. Not because anything was wrong physically, but because he needed a break from pretending everything was fine internally. In the mirror, nothing looked different. That's another frustrating part. There is no external evidence for what's happening inside. He washed his hands slowly, stayed a bit longer than necessary, looked at nothing in particular, then checked his phone. And there it was again. The reflex. Her name. He didn't even fully realize he had opened the conversation thread until he was already there. No new messages. Of course. Still, he stared at it longer than he should have. Not hoping for a reply exactly. More like waiting for emotional confirmation that she still existed in the same accessible way she used to. But nothing responded back. Just a static interface of old messages that didn't continue forward anymore. He put the phone away quickly and left the bathroom. Back at the table, the conversation was still going. He rejoined normally, smiled again when appropriate, responded at the right times. But something in him had already shifted slightly inward. Later that night, when he got home, the apartment felt different again. Not empty, just lacking emotional texture. He turned on the TV without paying attention, sat on the couch, scrawled his phone. Nothing unusual, but none of it connected properly. That's the best way he could describe it. Everything was working, but nothing was landing. And then it happened again. A very small moment. He saw something funny online. A meme, maybe. And his first instinct wasn't just to laugh. It was to send it to her. That instinct hit him before memory caught up. And when memory caught up, there was a strange gap of silence in his mind. Because the action had nowhere to go. That mismatch between instinct and absence is where grief quietly lives. He didn't send it, obviously, but he didn't move on immediately either. He just sat there holding the phone, realizing how many small invisible habits were built around her presence without him ever formally acknowledging it. It wasn't just big emotional moments he missed. It was micro reactions, daily emotional reflexes, tiny sharing impulses that used to make life feel connected in real time. Now those impulses just stopped at him. Nowhere to go. And that's when sadness started showing up properly. Not as collapse, but as accumulation. He opened old photos without planning to. Scrolled without intention. Saw moments he didn't remember thinking much about at the time. Her in his hoodie. Her laughing mid-sentence. A blurry picture of food they both forgot they took. Nothing dramatic. Just life. And somehow that made it worse. Because it wasn't about loss of a peak moment. It was loss of repetition. Loss of everyday continuity. He leaned back on the couch and stared at the ceiling for a while. Phone on his chest. No music. No distraction. Just stillness. And in that stillness, something finally became clear enough to feel uncomfortable. He didn't just miss her presence in his life. He missed how naturally she made his life feel shared. Even in silence. Even in routine. Even in nothing moments. And now, those nothing moments belong only to him again. That realization didn't arrive with dramatic emotion. It arrived with exhaustion. The kind that makes your body feel heavier without warning. He closed his eyes for a moment. Not sleeping. Just existing. And for the first time in a while, he didn't try to immediately rationalize it. Didn't call it stress. Didn't blame the day. Didn't minimize it. He just sat with the fact that something inside his everyday life had quietly lost its second witness. And that absence was starting to show up everywhere he used to feel normal. It didn't come as a revelation. Not in the way people like to imagine. No sudden clarity. No dramatic emotional breakthrough. No moment where everything finally made sense. It came more like exhaustion that started speaking clearly for the first time. Quiet, unavoidable, late at night when there was nothing left to distract him from himself. He was sitting on his couch, phone in hand, not even scrolling anymore. Just holding it, like a habit his body hadn't updated yet. The apartment was silent except for the faint sound of the refrigerator. He used to like this time of night. Now it felt different, not peaceful. Exposed, and for some reason, he opened their old conversation again, not searching for anything specific. That's the part he found hard to explain later. There was no intention, just muscle memory mixed with emotional instability. He scrolled slowly, not reading for content, reading for presence. The way someone reads handwriting from a person who is no longer standing in their room. At first, it looked normal, like any relationship in text form. Messages, replies, small jokes, plans, ordinary exchanges that didn't seem significant while they were happening. But now, looking at it from a distance, something uncomfortable started to emerge. Patterns, not dramatic ones, structural ones. She asked. He responded late. She followed up. He answered briefly. She softened tension. He moved past it quickly. She reopened emotional space. He stepped out of it before it fully formed. And the more he looked, the harder it became to ignore a simple truth. She had been holding emotional continuity between them. Not in an exaggerated way. Not like some metaphor people use to romanticize imbalance. But in very real, small, consistent actions. She kept conversations alive when they started fading. She translated emotional silence into something understandable instead of letting it break. She repaired tone shifts he didn't even fully register at the time. She made emotional space safe enough for him to withdraw without everything collapsing. And without her doing that, a lot of their connection would have simply ended much earlier. That realization didn't feel good. It didn't feel romantic either. It felt late. Like understanding something important after the system has already stopped requiring it. He put the phone down for a moment, then picked it back up again. That back and forth wasn't conscious anymore. It was emotional friction. And the worst part was that nothing in those messages looked unhealthy at first glance. That's what made it so difficult to admit. There were no obvious red flags. No extreme behavior. No clear wrongdoing. Just imbalance that only becomes visible when the emotional labor stops. He leaned his head back against the couch, eyes open, staring at nothing. And suddenly, memories started resurfacing differently, not as isolated events, but as sequences. Moments he previously remembered as neutral now rearranged themselves. A night she stayed up waiting for him to reply properly after a slightly cold interaction. A morning she asked if everything was okay even though he was the one who had emotionally withdrawn the night before. A conversation where she tried to explain something gently, and he responded with practicality instead of emotional engagement. At the time, none of it felt like a pattern. It felt like life. Now it looked like structure. And structure is harder to ignore than emotion, because emotion can be dismissed as temporary. Structure implies consistency, and consistency implies responsibility. He stood up and walked into the kitchen without really deciding to. Opened the fridge, closed it, then stood there for a few seconds doing nothing. That's when the thought came, not fully formed, just a sentence fragment in his mind. She was holding more than I realized. And immediately after that came something worse. I got used to it. Not as accusation, just recognition. And that recognition hit differently, because it didn't feel like guilt yet. Guilt would have been easier. Guilt at least gives emotion a direction. This felt more like emptiness with clarity inside it. He went back to the couch, sat down slower this time, like his body had slightly lost energy. And for the first time, he stopped trying to argue with what he was seeing in the messages. He just let it be visible. The way she stayed emotionally present even when he was inconsistent. The way she kept reopening space without forcing him into it. The way she explained instead of escalating. The way she softened emotional edges so things didn't break completely during moments he didn't fully show up. And slowly, an uncomfortable truth formed underneath everything else. She hadn't been too emotional like he sometimes felt in the moment. She had been doing emotional maintenance work that kept the relationship stable while he was partially absent. Not intentionally absent, but inconsistently present. And there's a difference in impact, even if intention is complicated. He closed his eyes, then opened them again, as if that would change what he was understanding. It didn't. Another memory surfaced, one he hadn't thought about in detail before. She had been trying to explain something important about how she felt disconnected after certain interactions. Nothing dramatic, just honest. And instead of staying in that emotional space with her, he had simplified it, minimized it, moved the conversation forward too quickly. At the time, he thought he was keeping things calm. Now it looked like something else. Avoidance disguised as stability. And she had adapted to that over time. That adaptation was what he was seeing now. Not resentment, not anger, just gradual emotional withdrawal from trying to be fully understood in real time. He opened his phone again, scrolled further back, and noticed something else. Her messages used to be longer, not in length alone, in effort, more context, more emotional framing, more attempts to make sure he understood what she meant beyond just words. And over time, they became shorter, not cold, just efficient, like someone slowly stopping the translation process because it no longer felt fully received. That shift was subtle enough that he had never consciously registered it while it was happening. But now it was obvious. Too obvious. He put the phone down again. This time it stayed down longer. He sat in silence. No distraction. No movement. And something inside him started to feel unfamiliar. Not regret exactly. Not yet. More like structural awareness collapsing into emotional understanding. That she hadn't changed suddenly. She had adjusted gradually to what he was capable of holding emotionally different times. And without realizing it, He had come to rely on that adjustment, not because he demanded it, but because it made the relationship easier to maintain without fully confronting his own emotional inconsistencies. That's what made it uncomfortable. Not the fact that she left, but the fact that she had been adapting the whole time, and he hadn't fully seen it. Not until she stopped needing to. There was a specific moment he kept returning to now in his mind. Not because it was dramatic, because it was simple. She had said something emotional once, trying to connect more deeply, and instead of staying there with her, he had responded in a way that ended the emotional thread. Not harshly, just efficiently, like closing a door slightly earlier than she expected. And she didn't force it open again immediately. She just accepted it. And that acceptance had slowly changed everything afterward. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, phone still dark in his hand. And for the first time, he thought something he hadn't allowed himself to think before in full clarity. She stopped fighting to be understood the same way. Not because she stopped caring, but because she started conserving herself. And that realization didn't feel like insight anymore. It felt like consequence. Not immediate, not explosive, just delayed understanding arriving after emotional structure had already shifted. And sitting there in the quiet of his apartment, he finally understood something he hadn't been able to see while it was happening. She hadn't become distant first. She had stopped overextending her emotional clarity into a space that wasn't consistently meeting her halfway. And in that absence of effort, he was finally seeing how much effort there had been in the first place. He keeps trying to frame it as a moment where she left. That's the easiest story the mind builds afterward. Someone withdraws. Someone changes. Someone becomes distant. Someone stops trying. But the truth feels less cinematic than that, and also more uncomfortable. Because when he really sits with it, when he stops trying to make it fit a clean narrative, it doesn't feel like she left him. It feels like she stopped abandoning herself inside the connection. There's a difference he didn't understand at first. A quiet, almost invisible difference. And it changes everything. It wasn't sudden. Nothing about her ever really was. Even her calmness, the thing that now unsettles him the most, didn't arrive like a decision. It arrived like exhaustion that had finally stopped negotiating. He remembers the small things now. Not dramatic endings. Not final conversations. Just ordinary moments that didn't feel important at the time. She stopped explaining herself as much. Stopped circling back to clarify emotional misunderstandings he brushed past too quickly. Stopped trying to reopen conversations that had quietly closed on his side. And at first, he thought it was relief. Less emotional pressure. Less intensity. Less need to figure things out. It felt easier. Cleaner. He even told himself it was healthier. But what he didn't realize was that ease was not the same thing as balance. It was just imbalance with less resistance. And resistance was what she had been quietly providing for a long time. Not in a dramatic way. In small, invisible ways. Like holding emotional threads that would have otherwise fallen apart mid-conversation. Like translating his silence into something she could still emotionally engage with instead of taking it at face value. Like continuing to reach for connection even when the return wasn't consistent. He didn't see it as effort at the time. It just felt like her personality. That's how normalization works. You stop noticing what someone is doing for the relationship because they do it so consistently becomes invisible. But once she stopped, everything became visible. Not immediately. Not all at once. It came in layers. At first, he just felt a slight shift in conversations. Shorter responses. Less emotional expansion. Fewer attempts to deepen misunderstandings into connection. Then he noticed she didn't revisit emotional moments the way she used to. If something felt off, it stayed off. No soft repair afterward. No gentle reopening. Just completion. That was new. And it made him uneasy in a way he couldn't immediately name. Because previously, even after emotional distance, there was always a return to softness. Always a re-entry point. Now there wasn't. Now things ended where they ended. And stayed there. One night, he sensed something slightly cold without thinking too much about it. A small dismissal. A habitual deflection. Nothing major. And he waited. Subconsciously. Not for a dramatic reaction. Just for what used to happen after. The gentle correction. The emotional smoothing. The attempt to reconnect the tone. But it didn't come. Instead, she responded simply, directly, and stopped. No emotional follow-up. No effort to pull him back into deeper connection. Just completion. He stared at the message longer than he expected. Not because it hurt, because it didn't continue. And the absence of continuation created a strange kind of internal friction. Later that night, he found himself thinking about her more than usual. Not because anything emotional had happened, but because nothing emotional had followed. That was the shift he hadn't fully understood yet. She wasn't escalating distance. She was removing maintenance. And without maintenance, the relationship stopped compensating for imbalance. He started noticing it in other areas too. If he went quiet, she didn't immediately fill the silence anymore. If he answered briefly, she didn't expand the conversation on his behalf. If he drifted emotionally, she didn't automatically translate that drift into something manageable. It was all neutral now. And neutrality, when you're used to being emotionally buffered by someone, feels strangely cold. Not because it is cold, but because it's honest. One evening, he caught himself rereading old messages again. This time differently. Not looking for memories. Looking for patterns he had previously ignored. And they were everywhere. Her effort to keep emotional continuity alive during his inconsistency. Her subtle attempts to understand him without making him feel exposed. Her willingness to stay present even when clarity wasn't being fully met on his side. And for the first time, he didn't interpret those moments as just her being caring. He saw the cost, the accumulation, the repeated emotional labor of trying to bridge a gap that wasn't being consistently bridged from both sides. And something uncomfortable started forming in him. Not guilt yet. Guilt would imply a single moment of wrongdoing. This felt more like delayed recognition of structure. He sat back on the couch, phone still open in his hand, and realized something he hadn't fully allowed himself to think before. She hadn't been reacting to one or two moments. She had been adapting to a pattern he had been partially unaware of, but still participating in. And adaptation has limits, even for patient people, especially for patient people, because patience is an infinite emotional elasticity. It's a resource, and resources deplete quietly. He remembered a specific conversation now differently. She had tried to explain how emotionally disconnected she felt after certain interactions. At the time, he heard it as sensitivity, maybe even overthinking. But now it didn't sound like that anymore. It sounded like information, accurate information, delivered before she had fully withdrawn. And he hadn't fully received it. Not in the way it needed to be received. He closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. The room felt unchanged, but something inside his perception of it had shifted, because now he could see something he couldn't before. She wasn't withdrawing to punish him. She was withdrawing to preserve herself. That distinction mattered more than anything else, because punishment implies intent to harm. Preservation implies limit, and limits are not emotional attacks. They are boundaries that arrive when something has been stretched too far for too long. He stood up and walked slowly into the kitchen without fully deciding to. Opened the fridge, stared inside without seeing anything, closed it again, and just stood there. Because for the first time, he couldn't locate her absence as something external anymore. It wasn't something happening to him. It was something that had been unfolding between them, gradually, mutually shaped, even if asymmetrically experienced. He returned to the couch, sat down. No phone this time, just silence. And in that silence, the emotional noise he had been pushing through for days finally settled into something more structured. Not chaos, understanding, not sudden forgiveness, not blame, just recognition. She had stopped fighting to be understood in the same way because the effort required to maintain that fight was no longer sustainable inside the same dynamic. And what he had interpreted as emotional distance was actually the end of emotional overextension. There was a long pause in his thoughts after that realization, because once you see it clearly, there's no easy way to unsee it. He thought about reaching out. For a moment, not to fix anything, not to reopen anything, just to say something honest. But even that impulse felt complicated now, because honesty without changed behavior feels incomplete, and he wasn't sure yet what he had changed. So he stayed still, letting the silence exist without trying to immediately interpret it. And somewhere inside that silence, a final understanding settled, and not dramatic, not poetic, just quietly irreversible. What changed her wasn't a single moment. It was the accumulated experience of not being fully met where she consistently showed up. And her calmness now wasn't absence of feeling. It was the moment she stopped offering more emotional presence than she was receiving back. Not to punish him, not to teach him a lesson, but simply because she finally reached the point where she could no longer keep translating a connection that wasn't translating both ways. And for the first time, he understood. She didn't leave him emotionally. She stopped leaving herself inside the relationship. And that was the part he couldn't undo anymore.
Thank you for spending this moment with me. If this message resonated with your soul, remember to subscribe and continue this journey with us here on Twin Flame Journey. And always remember, what is meant for your soul will always find its way back to you. Until next time, beautiful soul, trust the journey.